My wife cheated with her coworker while I worked double shifts to pay our bills, so I took everything she loved and walked away without a word. I'm a 30-year-old guy, and for most of my marriage, I truly believed loyalty could be earned through sacrifice. I grew up in one of those families where men didn't get to talk about being tired. You provided, you worked, you shut up about everything else. My dad used to say, if you love someone, you don't complain, you carry the weight. And for a long time, that became the only blueprint I understood. So when I married Jenna, I stepped into the role like it was carved into my bones. She used to call me the dependable one, running her fingers through my hair after long shifts and telling me she felt safe with me. I didn't realize at the time that every compliment she gave me was a brick in the cage I was willingly building around myself. I worked harder and harder because I thought her admiration was proof. I was doing marriage right, but the cracks started quietly. At first, it was a joke, her saying, "You're never home," followed by a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. Then it became passive-aggressive comments, like, "Must be nice to choose work over your wife." I'd stand there exhausted, smelling like kitchen grease or factory dust, depending on which job I had finished. Wondering how she could say that, when I was killing myself to cover bills, she kept inflating new clothes, brunches, subscriptions she forgot she signed up for. Still, I bit my tongue. I told myself stress makes people snap. I told myself I was doing the right thing. I told myself love was supposed to hurt sometimes. Then she started staying late for team meetings. She'd text me, "Don't wait up," with a smiley face that felt colder every time I read it. I asked who she was meeting with, but she waved it off. "Just work people. Don't overthink." I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of everything falling apart. And the night she walked in, at almost midnight, smelling like a perfume she didn't own, something in my chest tightened in a way I couldn't name yet. I used to tell people my marriage was solid, the kind you build slowly and intentionally. And honestly, from the outside, it did look that way. Friends would say things like, "You two are so stable," or "I wish I had what you guys have." I'd nod, pretending I believed it too, even though something inside me had started to feel hollow, like I was holding up a structure that only looked strong because I was the one carrying all the weight. Inside our home, Jenna felt different, colder, shorter with her words. She'd walk past me in the hallway like she was passing a coworker instead of her husband. At the same time, she started talking more and more about someone from her office, Evan. At first, it sounded harmless. "Evan said the funniest thing today. Evan helped me fix the spreadsheet. Evan brought coffee for everyone." But as the days went on, I noticed she said his name with this lightness, a brightness she didn't use with me anymore. One night over dinner, I tried to bring it up gently. "Everything okay between us?" I asked, poking at my food because I already knew the answer. She sighed dramatically. "You're always paranoid. Can't we just eat?" "I'm not paranoid. She cut me off. "You're never here, and when you are, you're interrogating me." Her words hit harder than they should have. I tried explaining that I was working double shifts because our bills were piling up, but she rolled her eyes like I was blowing things out of proportion. And that's when I noticed her phone buzzing relentlessly, never leaving her side, screen always flipped face down. I wanted to ask who she kept texting. I wanted to ask why she suddenly showered before coming home, or why she started dressing up for work in outfits she used to save for dates. But I convinced myself I was imagining things: stress, exhaustion, insecurity. Then came the night she didn't come home until nearly 1 a.m., smiling to herself as she walked in, and for the first time, I felt a sharp twist in my gut, whispering that something was deeply, dangerously wrong by this point. My life had become a constant blur of work, exhaustion, and quiet worry. I was pulling double shifts, morning at the warehouse, night at the convenience store because bills kept piling up, and Jenna's little splurges weren't so little anymore. Every time I walked through the front door, I was greeted with her smile. Warm on the surface, but distant, almost rehearsed. She'd ask about my day, but the conversation never lingered. She'd glance at her phone, tapping and texting with that same furtive energy that had started creeping into our lives. Months ago, I told myself I was being paranoid. I rationalized her long hours at work, her late-night meetings, the constant buzz of notifications. But deep down, I started noticing patterns. She would spend 30 minutes in the bathroom, longer than necessary, coming out smelling different perfume I hadn't seen in our apartment before. She started talking about work events I never got invited to, lunches with colleagues I didn't know, and suddenly her team meetings had become almost sacred. One Thursday, I walked into the living room to find her laughing at something on her phone, trying to hide it like I wouldn't notice. "Who's that?" I asked casually, but my voice carried more tension than I intended. "Oh, just Evan," she replied, a little too quickly, smiling nervously. "He's funny, that's all." I forced a laugh, trying to shake the unease curling in my stomach. "Funny, huh? Must be nice to have someone to laugh with at work." She smiled, shrugged, and changed the topic. My gut twisted, but I didn't push it. That night, while I tried to sleep on the couch after a 12-hour shift, I couldn't ignore the way my chest tightened every time her phone buzzed, every time she quietly slipped into the bedroom at strange hours. I started catching glimpses of something more behind her Isa spark that didn't belong to me anymore, and then it happened. She stayed out past midnight, claiming extra work stuff, and when she finally walked in, the scent of a perfume I didn't recognize clung to her like a shadow. My chest tightened harder than ever. Something had shifted. I realized, with a cold jolt, that my life was about to unravel in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The unease I'd been feeling for weeks finally started to solidify into something tangible. Small inconsistencies in Jenna's stories began piling up like a wall I couldn't climb. She'd tell me she stayed late at team meetings, but the GPS on her car, once parked in the driveway when I left for work, would show her moving in a completely different direction. I tried rationalizing it. Maybe she ran errands. Maybe she stopped for coffee, but the excuses started feeling hollow, like paper shields against a storm I couldn't yet see. One Friday night, I came home early, hoping for a quiet evening together. I found her in the kitchen, phone tucked under her arm, face lit by the screen. She glanced up, startled, but forced a smile. "Hey, didn't expect you home so soon," she said, her voice too light, too practiced. I noticed the way she clutched the phone against her chest, as if it contained a secret I wasn't meant to know. My chest tightened, that old knot of worry rising with every heartbeat. "Jenna? Who's that?" I asked, nodding toward her phone. "Nothing. Just a work thing," she replied quickly, a defensive edge creeping into her voice. I tried to let it slide. I really did. I told myself it was stress, paranoia, overthinking after my shifts. But the little flickers her, laughing at texts. The whispered calls she ended the moment I walked in were impossible to ignore. I noticed her starting to guard her phone even more, face down on the counter, tucked into her bag, always within reach, but out of sight. I tried subtle questions. Team meeting ran late again.
"Yeah?"
"Just extra work stuff. Don't worry about it," she'd reply too quickly, too rehearsed. By the end of the week, every interaction felt like walking on thin ice. I couldn't tell if it would hold or snap beneath me. My mind spun with possibilities I didn't want to consider, and yet the feeling in my chest grew heavier, sharper, almost physical. That night, I stayed awake longer than usual, listening to the faint hum of her phone vibrating on the nightstand, and then, as I drifted toward sleep, a message preview popped up. Just enough to make my stomach drop a name I didn't recognize. Something inside me twisted, cold and certain. This wasn't just about work anymore. I couldn't ignore it. But I also didn't yet know how deep it went. I've always prided myself on being patient, on giving people the benefit of the doubt. But patience has its breaking point, and that night, mine ran out. Jenna had gone to another late work meeting, and I was home alone, stomach tight, heart pounding with the weight of months of suspicion. I told myself, don't do it. Don't invade her privacy. But the knot in my chest was unbearable, whispering that if I didn't know the truth, I'd never sleep again. I picked up her phone just for a second. I promised myself. But one swipe, one chat window, and my entire world collapsed. Screenshots, hotel confirmations, long strings of messages filled with laughter and teasing that weren't meant for me, they were meant for him. "Evan," the words hit me like punches. "Can't wait to see you tonight. You make work so much fun. Poor guy has no idea." Every message, every shared photo, every inside joke she had kept from me was proof. She had been living a double life for months, and I had been the fool, working myself to exhaustion while she built a secret world behind my back. I sank to the couch, my hands shaking, the phone slipping from my grip. I could smell the faint scent of her perfume, lingering like a ghost of the life I thought we shared. My chest felt hollow, yet burning all at once. I'd given everything: my time, my energy, my sanity, and this is how it was repaid: with mockery, with lies, with betrayal. I wanted to scream, to confront her, to throw the phone across the room. But I couldn't. Part of me knew that this was bigger than a fight. This wasn't a moment of anger. This was a life-altering revelation. My mind raced through every conversation, every touch, every evening she spent working late. All of it replayed like a montage of deceit I hadn't wanted to see. And then I noticed Ita. Folder labeled plans. Messages detailing her and Evan planning when she would leave me, how she would keep using me financially until she could upgrade her life with him. It wasn't just cheating. It wasn't a mistake. It was calculated, premeditated. I sat there, numb, staring at the screen. For the first time, I wasn't just hurt, I was fully, terrifyingly aware of how completely I'd been deceived. And in that suffocating silence, I realized one thing. My life as I knew it was over. I don't think I'll ever forget that moment. I sat on the edge of our bed, phone trembling in my hand, staring at a string of messages that made my stomach drop straight to the floor. She hadn't just been cheating. Jenna and Evan had a plan, one that was laid out in meticulous detail. Dates, times, even apartment listings she had secretly been checking. They were going to leave me behind, like a placeholder she'd use to fund her life, until she could move on to something or someone better. Every text I read felt like a knife twisting. Once I get the promotion, we can finally be free, she typed to him. I'm keeping him happy for now. Pays everything anyway. The realization hit me harder than anything I'd ever felt. This wasn't a fleeting mistake. This was months of strategy, cold and calculated. The woman I had trusted with my heart, my home, and my life had been planning my obsolescence all along. I remembered the nights I had worked 12-hour shifts, my body aching, my eyes barely able to stay open, just to make sure we could pay rent, bills, and her little indulgences. I remembered coming home to her smile, believing it was real, thinking I was building a life together. And now I knew it was all a livery word, every laugh, every touch, carefully choreographed to keep me in the dark. I felt a strange mix of fury and disbelief. Part of me wanted to scream, to confront her immediately, to demand answers. Another part of me just wanted to vanish, to disappear, and never be part of this twisted story she had written without me. The fear, the anger, the betrayal, it was all flooding me at once, overwhelming and suffocating. Then, I caught a glimpse of something else. She had been draining our joint savings, without my knowledge. Funneling money into her secret outings with him. Every cent I had worked for, every sacrifice I had made, had been feeding their secret world. My blood ran cold, and in that instant I realized something terrifyingly clear. This was bigger than heartbreak. She had already started dismantling my life piece by piece, and I hadn't even seen it coming. I clenched my fists, trembling, as the weight of her betrayal finally sank in. I had two choices: confront her blindly and collapse under the storm, or plan a way to take back control, but I wasn't ready to decide yet. And that night, as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the first spark of something dangerous, something calculated inside I've always believed in endurance, in pushing through pain, in holding myself together no matter what. But that night, I hit a wall I couldn't climb. I sank to the floor, back pressed against the cold apartment walls, and the weight of it, all the lies, the planning, the betrayal, brought me to my knees. I felt hollow in a way I didn't think was possible. Every memory of our marriage, every sacrifice, every extra shift I'd worked, suddenly felt meaningless. She had used me, and I hadn't even seen it coming. I sat there, phone in my lap, staring at the messages she had left behind, rereading lines where she mocked me in private to him. He doesn't even notice. So useful. The words burned into my brain. I could feel tears pricking my eyes, my chest tightening so much it was hard to breathe. I hadn't just been betrayed, I had been weaponized for someone else's pleasure. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to lash out. But I couldn't. My body felt like it belonged to someone else. Weak and shaking and too tired to fight, I remembered the little things, the early mornings she pretended to need, the long nights out she worked late, the coffee dates she claimed were with clients. Each memory now felt like a carefully laid trap. I had thought I was providing for us, protecting us. But really, I was funding her secret life with him. Hours passed. I stayed there on the floor, staring at the shadows the streetlights cast through the blinds. My mind was numb, but something inside me began to stir, not anger. Not yet, just clarity. I realized that for the first time in months, I wasn't confused. I understood what had happened. The next morning, I didn't wake her. I didn't confront her. I didn't yell or cry or beg. I made coffee, packed my bag, and sat at the table staring at the quiet apartment. Every fiber of me knew that I couldn't react in the moment. Reacting would have meant losing. Instead, I made a decision. I would take back control piece by piece, and she wouldn't see it coming. But I didn't know yet how far I was willing to go, or how much of her world I was about to dismantle. That thought lingered like a storm on the horizon, quiet but inevitable. The next few days were a strange haze of calculated silence. I went to work, as usual, smiled, nodded, and joked with coworkers. But inside, every thought was circling around one thing: taking back control of the life she had stolen from me. I consulted a lawyer discreetly, explaining everything: her secret spending, the affair, the manipulation. They outlined exactly how I could protect myself legally, how I could secure the money she had been siphoning off, and how every lie she had told could be used against her if I needed it. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of power in my chest, something I hadn't realized I'd lost entirely. I began moving our joint funds into an account she didn't know about, canceling automatic payments she relied on without making a sound. Car insurance, covered. Gym membership, gone. Subscriptions she paid for with my money, removed. Every cent she thought she controlled was quietly slipping from her grasp. I kept a record of everything: the evidence, the receipts, the messages. Every step was deliberate, precise, silent. I wasn't angry yet. I was strategic at home. Jenna carried on as if nothing had changed. She joked. She laughed. She waved her phone around like it was a harmless toy. I watched her from across the room, seeing the arrogance in the way she moved, the confidence in her smirk, not knowing how fragile it was. The contrast between her carefree demeanor and the truth I held in my hands was dizzying. Nights were the hardest. I would lie awake listening to her phone hum with notifications from him, imagining the conversations I knew were happening, the laughter, the secrets, the planning, and I would breathe, slow and measured, telling myself, not yet, not now. Patience was part of the plan. Then came the night I packed my essentials, quietly closed documents, a folder with all the evidence, every shred of proof she thought she had buried. I placed it carefully in a bag, ready, knowing that when I left, it would be the calmest, most devastating blow I could deliver, and just before sleep claimed me. I glanced at her on the couch, phone in hand, laughing at a message from him, oblivious to the storm that was coming. The moment of truth was close, and I could almost taste it, but I wasn't ready to strike. Not yet. The morning was quiet, almost eerily so. Jenna was still in the shower, humming to herself, completely unaware that today would change everything. I moved like a shadow, carefully packing my essentials clothes, important documents, and the folder containing every piece of evidence I had painstakingly collected over weeks. I didn't glance at her. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say a word. For once, silence was my ally, and I intended to wield it with precision. Before leaving, I made sure our finances were untouchable. Every automatic payment, she depended on car insurance, subscriptions, utilities linked to her convenience, was canceled or rerouted. The money she had secretly relied on was no longer hers. Every small indulgence she had funded through me evaporated in minutes, leaving her world fragile and precarious without a single confrontation. It was subtle, surgical, but devastating. I walked through the apartment one last time, my heart heavy but calm, and left the divorce papers neatly on the kitchen counter. The folder with all the evidence of her affair was on top, impossible to ignore. I paused at the door, listening to the faint sound of water dripping from the shower, the soft hum of her phone on the counter. I felt no satisfaction in anger, an icy clarity that she had sown this for herself. As I stepped outside, the city smelled faintly of rain and asphalt, a sharp contrast to the suffocating tension I left behind. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew the storm would reach her soon enough. She would open the folder and see the full extent of her miscalculations, and there would be no excuses, no charm, no lies to cover it. I walked away without confrontation, without words, feeling a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in months, I could breathe. Yet, in the quiet of that morning, I knew the fallout was already beginning, and the ripples of this departure would reach her faster than she could ever imagine. And as I disappeared into the rhythm of the city streets, I couldn't help but wonder, would she ever truly understand what she had lost? By the time Jenna returned home that evening, the apartment was empty. Silence greeted her like a wall, thick and suffocating. She froze at the door, dropping her bag, her eyes scanning the space that had once felt like her kingdom. The air smelled faintly of my cologne, lingering like a ghost of the life she thought she had control over. Panic spread across her face as she realized something was wrong. Every instinct she had told her that I was still here, but the emptiness screamed otherwise. Her first instinct was her phone. She dialed frantically, leaving messages I didn't answer. Each unanswered call seemed to widen the chasm between the life she thought she controlled and the reality she now faced. She stumbled into the living room and froze, seeing the canceled accounts, the drained joint card balances, and finally, the folder sitting on the kitchen counter like a guillotine ready to fall. Her hands shook as she picked it up, and in that moment, the facade cracked. She flipped it open, eyes widening as she scanned the evidence. Receipts, messages, screenshots, detailed logs of every lie she had told. My silent revenge wasn't flamboyant. It was calculated and complete. Everything she had depended on me for, the money, the stability, the cover for her affair, was gone, and it didn't take me being there to make it happen. She staggered to the bedroom, phone clutched in her hand, calling him frantically. Evan didn't answer. For the first time, she realized that her carefully curated world was unraveling. There would be no escape, no help, no one to prop her up. Every move she had made to keep me in the dark now worked against her, and she had no one to blame but herself. As she crumpled onto the couch, the gravity of everything hit her, and I, far away, walking through city streets, could almost hear the echo of her despair and ironic symphony of her own making. But I wasn't done watching the fallout unfold. Not yet. She had no idea the last piece of my plan was about to reach her, and it would hit harder than anything she could have imagined. I didn't seek her out immediately. I let the storm rage in its own time. When I finally agreed to meet Jenna, it was at a neutral location, a small cafe neither of us had been to before. She arrived, hair slightly disheveled, eyes red from crying, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. She didn't know whether to be angry, terrified, or desperate, and that confusion alone gave me a strange calm. "Can we talk?" she asked, voice trembling. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I let her speak. I let her stumble through excuses, apologies, and blame. She begged, she cried, she tried every angle, every word she thought could manipulate me back. But I remained silent, calm, and collected her words bouncing off me like raindrops on stone. When she finally ran out of breath, I slid the folder across the table. Every lie, every stolen cent, every detail of her affair laid bare. She picked it up, flipping through pages with widening eyes, realization dawning with the slow, horrifying inevitability I had anticipated. Her face went pale, lips quivering, hands shaking. This can't be all real," she whispered, voice cracking. I leaned back, quiet. "It is." Her mouth opened, tried to form words, but no excuses could repair what she had done. Evan had abandoned her. The financial safety net she thought I was gone, and the life she thought she controlled had dissolved before her eyes. She finally broke down completely, tears streaming, begging for a chance I had no intention of giving. There was no guilt to forgive, no apologies to accept. I had been patient, methodical, and calm, not out of cruelty, but because I had waited for the right moment to reclaim my life, and as I stood to leave, I saw her realization settle fully. She had miscalculated. She had assumed I would stay, that I would forgive, that I would be the one left holding the pieces. But I wasn't that man anymore. I walked out, leaving her with the weight of every choice she had made. And for the first time in months, I felt lighter, free from her deception, free from her lies, free to start over without looking back. But what she didn't realize was that the final chapter of her reckoning was only just beginning. I didn't stick around to see Jenna spiral further. I didn't need to. The quietest revenge is walking away, letting the consequences of her own actions unravel everything she thought she controlled. I moved into a small apartment, simple, unassuming, and mine entirely. No distractions, no chaos, no constant reminders of betrayal. Just a clean slate in the knowledge that I had taken back the one thing she could never touch again. I could hear about her through mutual friends, how she was panicking at work, how her apartment applications had fallen through, how Evan had disappeared when she needed him most. She would call, text, leave messages filled with begging, pleading, and excuses, but I didn't respond. I felt no joy in her suffering, only a calm satisfaction in knowing she could no longer manipulate me, no longer drain me, no longer make me doubt myself. I started rebuilding. I found routines that nourished me instead of exhausting me. I cooked, I exercised, I slept without fear. I laughed again, small at first, then fully, without guilt. I reconnected with friends who had drifted when I was overworked, and I let myself feel again without apology. The sense of freedom was intoxicating, almost surreal after months of betrayal. Some nights, I would catch a whiff of a perfume that reminded me of her, or see a text from an unknown number and feel a twinge of old anxiety. But then I'd remember the folder, the accounts, the silent dismantling of everything she had relied. Ina and I would smile quietly to myself. I had acted when it mattered, and now I could step back and simply exist. Jenna, I heard, still wonders about me, still wishes she could fix what she broke, but I don't respond. I don't need to. The life I built for myself now is full of calm, boundaries, and dignity. And as I lie down at night in my apartment, the soft hum of the city around me, I finally feel it. Closure. Not loud, not dramatic, not satisfying for anyone else, but perfect for me. I survived her betrayal. I reclaimed myself. And that, in the end, is revenge enough.